News Talk, news and views beyond the mainstream media.
Good morning and welcome to Morning Brew on the Orion Talk Radio Network, 1650 AM, Tonawanda, New York. It's Monday, start of a new week. It is my honor and privilege to welcome Dr. Betty Martini to the show. Welcome, Betty.
Oh, well, thank you, Gwen, and I'm delighted to be with you.
Betty, you are the most versed of anyone I know in the topic of aspartame, amino sweet, whatever word they want to call it. But I would like you to tell my audience a little bit about yourself and how it is you came to focus on this in particular.
Well, actually, I was getting ready to retire about 20 years ago. My husband had just sold his company, and he's a minister, but in our religion, ministers don't get paid. You know, free we receive, free we give. So he was going to take the money and show me the world. About that time, somebody, a friend of ours, had been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and his arms and legs were kicking out. You remember Michael Fox, a Diet Pepsi spokesman. So my husband asked me, he said, please see what's killing Dick. He appears to be dying. And he was a great speaker, and they had to help him to the podium. And as it happened, a physician was visiting with me. He says, see if he is drinking Diet Coke. And so I decided to contact the world expert, which is Dr. H.J. Roberts, and he says he is probably drinking a Diet Coke with his L-Dopa and they interact. And I said, but Dr. Roberts, if they interact, it's not an additive. He said, no, it's a drug. So I got him off of it, and 4 days later, all those reactions stopped, and he was normal again. And aspartame does precipitate Parkinson's. But I went ahead and read his first book and noticed that there were people got seizures from it, MS, just all these horrible things. I called Dr. Roberts back. I said, Dr. Roberts, hey, is this a world plague? He said, yes, it is. So my sweet husband, he said, well, you know, we can see the world or save it. He says we can use the money for you to create a global group warning people all over the world because nobody's got the billions, you know, to stop these monsters. It's addictive. So, you know, what are you going to do? So today we have operations in 43 countries. And when I got on the Internet, there was only one website, and that was the Aspartame Toxicity Center. And today there are millions and millions and millions of websites, and we have scanned in all the reports, the congressional hearings, the government reports, the FDA admitting they tried to indict them, the revoke petition, the information on Don Rumsfeld, how he got it on the market by political chicanery. I mean, the whole 9 yards was on there. And it was very, very interesting because up until that time, nobody correlated their problems with aspartame. And the wonderful doctors I work with, Dr. Roberts, Dr. Blaylock, Dr. Walton, all these doctors, there was nothing there, you know, for the people to understand. So they wrote physician papers, like Dr. Walton, who's a psychiatrist and who did a study on aspartame, wrote on aspartame and psychiatric problems. And Dr. Roberts wrote a medical text, 1,000-page medical text. Dr. Blaylock wrote, in fact, he dedicated it to me. And then Dr. Blaylock wrote Excitotoxins, A Taste That Kills. And then I began to actually get to see the world as I traveled and found the same thing in all these countries, these poor kids getting bipolar and psychiatric and behavioral problems. And movies began to be made like Sweet Misery, A Poison World. I don't think I'll ever forget that. You can look up under Aspartame videos. Corey Brackett called and told me how many years she'd been in a wheelchair and that she had the largest lesion ever diagnosed in an MS patient. She could barely talk or walk. And she said she got off aspartame and walked out of her wheelchair. And she said, a movie needs to be made about it. I said, tell me about it. And she said, I own the film company. I said, you do? And so I gave her the world experts, victims, and that's how the movie was made, Sweet Misery, A Poison World. And if you, I noticed somebody wrote an article called Aspartame, Sweet or Misery. That's on Health Central. That came in yesterday. But that really changed the world, that movie, because you got to see the attorney, James Turner, who tried to prevent it with Dr. John Oney, and even went to a prison where Diane Fleming has spent 10 of 30 years when her husband died of methanol poisoning from aspartame. The stories are just unbelievable, and it's been 20 years, and they've got all kinds of names: aspartame, amino sweet, NutraSweet, Equal, Spoonful, Canderel, Nature Test, Benevia. And the best thing is do not use artificial sweeteners. They did make a sweetener because of me. I have no financial association to it, called Just Like Sugar, but it is made out of organic food and is safe.
Betty, now, you must have the world's most awesome husband that supports you like that, so yay for you. You picked a good one.
I know. He tells people, he says, we don't have a marriage, we have a romance. And he's 81 years old.
Oh,
and we really do. He's one of the finest men I've ever known. What he said to me was, as much as I wanted to see the world, he said, how can we love our neighbor as ourselves if we see them actually consuming a chemical poison and never doing anything about it?
Well, Betty, when exactly did this come out onto the market, and who produced it?
Well, it was produced by G.D. Searle, and they couldn't get it to show safety. In other words, how can you take a poison that's an addictive, excitoceurotoxic, carcinogenic, genetically engineered drug and adjuvant that interacts with the mitochondria or the power of the cell and interacts with all your drugs besides all the diseases? There's no way to get it to show safety. So they, in 1965, they started doing these studies, and that the rats would develop brain tumors because it breaks down to diketopiperazine, a brain tumor agent. And since then, Dr. Saferdi has done 3 studies showing it to be a multi-potential carcinogen, caused all kinds of cancers and originally. And one just came out of Harvard, and it's so strong, industry must have got to them in 15 minutes, because after talking about how strong it was and how long, they apologized for promoting it.
Oh,
we do this all the time, But anyway, so they'd resurrect rats on paper after they died and excised brain tumors, and they would filter out the cancers or anything the FDA didn't want them to see. And so they actually, before the FDA knew all this, they approved it in 1974. And then when the FDA found out, they said, hey, do not market this. We're doing an investigation. And it just happens that Jerome Bressler, who did the Bressler Report, and it's on mpwhi.com on one of the banners, one of the last of the heroes of the FDA before our new FDA. But anyway, he told me, he said, Betty, you've got to find the 2 studies that they removed from our report. And he lives in Chicago, and we got to know him, and I went to talk to him, and he was saying how the he and Dr. Adrian Gross, they would try to get over to G.D. Searle. They had two sets of studies, and they would lock the doors, and he said Dr. Gross would just scream out, "We're going to get a court order." I mean, these studies were so horrible. I mean, this is the beginning of all this to write an encyclopedia, not a book. Anyway, I kept saying, Jerome, why are these studies so important? He said,
Betty,
yes.
Can you hold that thought, and we'll talk about why those studies were important when we come back after this break.
Okay.
This is Morning Brew on the Orion Talk Radio Network in 1650 AM, Tonawanda, New York. I am your host, Gwen Caldwell, with my guest today, Dr. Betty. My guest today is Dr. Betty Martini. Betty, when we left for break, you were talking about trying to find the documentation on the studies. That was an 8-year quest for you, wasn't it?
Yes, and they were, the birth defect studies, and then Dr. Monty found 4 more, and then the FDA finally admitted that they made the deal with G.D. Searle never to allow the public to know that it caused birth defects or anyone ever to see the birth defect things. Goldie Hawn, her favorite charity has to do with, I think it's Smile, about cleft palate. And these studies even showed cleft palate. And we took them to Jerome Russell in Chicago and added them back to the Russell report. And he was in his late 80s, in a nursing home. And he was so glad to have them back. An interesting thing is, until the day he died, even when he was able to get around and go to the cafeterias, he'd see somebody drinking, Diet Pop or anything with aspartame, and he would say, please, you're using poison. You're using literal poison. Do not use aspartame. And then he died, unfortunately. But as I was telling you about Dr. Deagle, he said it's too late, all this DNA damage. Now, what is he talking about? Dr. Alamany, I went to visit him in Barcelona, and the first thing he said to me when I walked in is, Betty, aspartame is going to murder 200 million people. And I said, well, Dr. Alamany, it probably already has. You have to remember, think of all the birth abortions with these neural tubal things. Not only that, aspartame is an endocrine disrupting drug and stimulates prolactin and changes the menopause and causes infertility. They're drinking it, they can't get pregnant to begin with. They get off of it, get pregnant. Aspartame is an abortifacient. And so they usually lose the baby before they know they're pregnant sometime. And some people have told me they've lost as many as 8 babies before somebody told them.
Oh, my gosh. Betty, can I stop you for a minute? We have a question in the chat room. Who paid these people off to keep these documents on the birth defects and that kind of thing quiet?
Well, G.D. Searle made the deal with the FDA, so that was the original manufacturer. And you take somebody like Arthur Hull Hayes, they fired the FDA commissioner that was going to revoke the petition for law at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I have the letter from his wife, and we have it on web because I confirmed it. And then they appointed Arthur Hull Hayes to do it. And when he left, talking about being paid, he had a deal with the Burson Marstella, the PR agency of the manufacturer, on a 10-year contract, $1,000 a day for 10 years. And I guess that's his payoff. And then he knew what he had to do because one of our doctors is Dr. Stoller, who is a pediatrician and lectures on aspartame and autism and such. And he knew Dr. Stoller and knew that he was going to have to put something deadly on the market. I don't know what they had over him, but anyway, to get him to do that. But he visited Dr. Stoller and he asked Dr. Stoller, and Dr. Stoller said, It's a deadly, deadly chemical poison.
Betty, what are the, I want to know what the symptoms of, they're selling water, like sports water. And I bought a case of it, and I started shaking. I had headaches. I had chest pains. And I'm thinking, what is different that's going on here? And here I looked at the ingredients on that, and it was aspartame in something that they're selling as a health drink. And I told my kids, get rid of that stuff. We're not drinking that anymore. This is terrible. But people I know that drink diet pop, all of them are overweight. And how is it that what is it about aspartame that causes people to gain weight?
Well, there's several things. If you look in the congressional hearings, in fact, I put it on Dr. Sandra Cabot's report. Dr. Warman said, they're selling it as a diet product where it actually makes you crave carbohydrates so you gain weight. Now, the Traco study, which I started to tell you about, with showed the DNA damage, also that shows that it embalms the formaldehyde, embalms living tissues with formaldehyde converted from the free methyl alcohol. Most toxicity in the liver, so it's hard to lose weight, and then a substantial amounts in the adipose tissue, which is your fat cells. So you see these people walking down the street with crepey hips and thighs, drinking a Diet Coke, and they're just full of formaldehyde. In fact, I was talking to the head of the board for the anti-American Cancer Institute when I was in New York, and she said she was talking to the funeral directors, and that they said they were using 25% less formaldehyde for embalming, that the bodies were simply coming in preserved.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay, so you wonder why people get right. But anyway, Dr. Sandra Cabot, who is our Mission Possible Australia, wrote a paper called Aspartame Makes You Fatter. It's on our website, or you can Google it. Just Aspartame Makes You Fatter, and it'll have the congressional record on it. Dr. Sandra Cabot, spelled C-A-B-O-T, and it tells you the whole thing. And she's sometimes called the liver doctor, and she goes into the whole thing. So if you want to know, it's caused an epidemic of obesity and also of diabetes, because aspartame not only can precipitate diabetes, but it simulates and aggravates diabetic retinopathy and neuropathy. It destroys the optic nerve. It causes diabetics to go into convulsions. It interacts with insulin, and the free methyl alcohol makes them lose limbs. If you want to kill a diabetic, aspartame will do it. And in 2004, somebody actually filed racketeering charges against the American Diabetes Association, because they take, funding from the manufacturer, and then they have the position that they can warn the diabetics and stop all this, or they can keep taking money. And they decided to keep taking money.
Oh, my gosh.
And, I've done lots of things. Our activists in Atlanta, several years we walked with the diabetics. We came in there one time with long stem yellow roses when they had their walks. They had equal shirts on, and someone had died from aspartame, and we had press packs with sympathy cards and black and yellow roses. And, oh my goodness, they embraced us, They thought we were coming to do something good. And we had Dr. Robert, who is a diabetic specialist, his position paper. And so they found out what they were doing. They said, you'll have to leave, called the police. And the police took a look at what we were giving out. He says, these people are trying to save these people's lives. And this is public property. And I say to leave them alone, and they can do what they want.
Hold that thought, Betty. We're going to break. This is Morning Brew on the Orion Talk Radio Network in 1650. Welcome back to Morning Brew on the Orion Talk Radio Network in 1650 AM, Tonawanda, New York. I am your host, Gwen Caldwell. Tonight, check out Ryan Brooks. Starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, The Sound of Freedom, followed by Joe Joseph, The Freedom Link. And then we've got Popeye, Down the Rabbit Hole. So great night of radio on Orion Talk Radio tonight. Be sure and check those shows out starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm here today with my guest, Betty, Dr. Betty Martini. And Betty, we have a question in the chat room about how someone can detox the aspartame from their system. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the report on the symptoms. Okay,
well, first of all, I don't have this on web. I have resources. When you go to mpwhi.com, you can click on resources, or you can email me, BettyM19 at Mindspring, MINDSPRING.com, and it'll have Dr. Caldwell's detox program on it, and Dr. Blaylock's what to do if you've used aspartame, and it will have everything, including how it got on the market, how to get it out of your state, all medical books, the information I gave you on diabetes and formaldehyde, what to use as a safe sweetener, a couple of the other poisons like sucralose or Splenda, and if you like drinking bleach, and sulfine potassium, which cause cancer and leukemia in original studies. So if you have that aspartame resource guide, you've got it all. And Dr. Caldwell's detox is really good. But I should warn people that aspartame is very, very addictive. Methanol is classified as a narcotic. It causes chronic methanol poisoning. This affects the dopamine system of the brain and causes the addiction. And then, so you have to kind of take it one day at a time. Usually after 60 days, it's just a ballpark figure. People start getting better. And the doctors say use distilled water to flush it out. But don't use it too long, maybe a month. Now, what I use is alkaline water. I have a machine, and afraid of any tap water where you can get drugs and aspartame and sucralose, and if you buy some of the bottled water, just like what you got, you know, they call some of it's called vitamin water or something. They stick aspartame in it, or healthy water, but they've got some names on it that make you think it's good and they've got aspartame in it. So, and I use alkaline water because I had acid reflux, which stopped it immediately, but Betty, what are the other names that they're using? I know that once you started exposing the aspartame in the products, they started kind of changing what they call it, but it's still the same old crap. Yeah, now the first thing they did, well, maybe it was a couple of years ago, is they changed the name aspartame to amino sweet. And boy, is that deceptive. They're trying to get away from the methanol. The methanol is what sweetens it, and they don't want people to know that they are, that they've got a severe metabolic poison in their product. And the propaganda on that is, there's more methanol in oranges. But in oranges, there's also ethanol, which is the antidote to methanol toxicity, and it's bound to pectin. And the methanol in aspartame is free and converts to formaldehyde and formic acid. So, it does. Dr. Bowen says it turns your tissues to plastic. It's a very, very, very serious thing. So it dehydrates you too, doesn't it? Yeah. When you get to my website, you'll notice there's buttons, and one of them is sudden cardiac death. And notice Dr. Blaylock's paper, aspartame alert for athletes That's why there's so many dropping dead, and they deplete magnesium as they run. And he says everybody should take magnesium. It protects the brain and the heart from excitotoxins, and he recommends Jigsaw, which is on the net, because they do make magnesium aspartame, but that will answer a lot of your questions. And that's why I use that alkaline water. It hydrates the body, keeps the body hydrated. And some Nobel laureate has said if your body's alkaline, that cancer dies and other diseases, it's good to use. So let me give you this list here. It's funny, the media will call them and they'll say, I want the list of 92 symptoms, and the FDA say, oh, we never had such a report. So I put it in one of these buttons on the FDA stationery, written to me, and I told them, I says, listen, when you lie, you have to remember that you have a paper trail. But anyway, reading directly from the FDA's report, headache is number one, dizziness, problems with balance, change in mood quality or level. Now, this is written as, that most people have headache, then comes dizziness, then comes mood quality. That's why we have all these problems with children, psychiatric behavioral problems due to the depletion of serotonin. Then you've got vomiting and nausea, abdominal pain, change in vision. The methanol converts to formaldehyde in the retina of the eye and causes blindness. Diarrhea, seizures and convulsions, memory loss, fatigue, weakness, neurological, rash, sleep problems, causes insomnia because of that depletion of serotonin, change in sensation, numbness, tingling, grand mal seizures, swelling, change in activity level, difficulty breathing, oral sensory changes, change in menstrual pattern. Remember, I told you it was an endocrine disrupting agent. Skin problems, localized pain and tenderness, urogenital, change in body temperature, difficulty swallowing, other metabolic, joint and bone pain, speech impairment, gastrointestinal, chest pain. And I want to stop here because aspartame causes irregular heart rhythm. It interacts with all cardiac medication. It damages the cardiac conduction system and causes sudden death. And anyway, if you remember when they took ephedra off the market, that athlete in West Palm Beach died from drinking Diet Coke all day, and then the next day he would fast. He didn't know why his weight was changing, and so anyway, there was an article about it, and there's no doubt in anybody's mind. Even Dr. Roberts called the medical director and said, how many diet drinks was this man using? And actually, he was like drinking them all day long. The medical examiner.
Oh my gosh!
On the funeral home. Okay, where were we here? Joint and bone pain, speech impairment, fainting. Think of Hillary Clinton and Bush, who said he fainted from a pretzel. Don't believe it. Cardiovascular, change in taste, difficulty with urination, edema, swelling, change in hearing, abdominal swelling, and change in saliva, change in urine volume, change in perspiration, eye irritation, unspecified, muscle tremors, epilepsy, seizures, change in appetite, change in body weight, nocturia, change in thirst or water intake, unconsciousness, coma. And one of the last studies was that it caused strokes and heart attacks, which we've known for years. Wheezing, constipation, extremity pain, problems with bleeding, unsteady gait, coughing, blood glucose disorders, blood pressure changes. It causes hypertension, changes in skin and nail coloration, change in hair and nails. Dr. Bowen said when he used it, his hair turned gray in 6 weeks. You damage the mitochondria, it makes you age. Excessive phlegm, sinus problems, partial seizures, hallucinations, lumps, shortness of breath, evidence of blood in stew or vomit, dysmenorrhea, change dental problems, change in smell. How you like this one? Death, other blood and lymphatics. It's complex partials, seizures, swollen lymph glands, eczema, hematuria, that's blood in the urine, shortness of breath due to position, difficulty with pregnancy, change in breast size or tenderness.
Okay, Betty,
change in sexual function.
Can you hold that thought? We're coming up on a break, and
okay.
As you can see, folks, this is a very long list. This is Morning Brew on the Orion Talk Radio Network in 1650 AM, Tonawanda, New York. Betty and I will be... Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Morning Brew on the Orion Talk Radio Network in 1650 AM, Tonawanda, New York. I am your host, Gwen Caldwell. Check out Writing on the Wall with your host, Tim Spearman, Saturdays from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. That's on Orion Talk Radio Network. And don't forget to check out Solvenar Radio Sunday mornings, 10 to noon Eastern Time. It's the absolute truth all the way from the Netherlands with your host, Solvenar. Tune in to him on Sunday mornings, 10 to 12. Okay, Betty, before we went to the break, we were going through a long list of symptoms that were provided directly from the FDA, and how they can know all these things are a problem and yet still approve this garbage for human consumption is just unbelievable to me. But we were talking during the break, and I would like you, if you wouldn't mind, to repeat what you were saying about when you handed out the information and people quit consuming the aspartame, the results that happened when they stopped consuming it.
Yeah, there's an organic and health food store here called Return to Eden. They said, let us help you. Give us 16 of your worst reports, and I did. One of them on how aspartame was listed with the Pentagon in an inventory of prospective biochemical warfare weapons submitted to Congress, and we have that in the 2005 Ecologist online if you want to read about that. People who died, what it does to the diabetic, and it just went on and on of just the worst stories, and they gave them out free. To just thousands and thousands of people. In fact, they said they would come in and get them by the handfuls. Excuse me. So what happened was, in about 60 days, she called me. She says, you are not going to believe what's going on down here. She said, thousands have come in, faxed, called. MS victims are walking out of wheelchairs. Seizure victims no longer have seizures. And people who were suffering with fibromyalgia and were crippled can walk again. And people had been going to doctors for years and they couldn't find out what was wrong with them, and about 60 days just woke up well. And I told her, I said, you don't have to tell me that. I said, I opened my address and phone number were not even in the brochure. And I opened up the door and a woman fell into my arms and she said, I was blind and now I can see. And I'll tell you something interesting about that is that a doctor walked in. He said that doctor that tried, who was an ophthalmologist and specialist in methanol toxicity, and tried to get Congress to take it off that of Parkinson's some years ago. But he said, if anybody ever really does something about aspartame, I want you to give them these records. And in those records, he was telling that if vision is in the wet stage, he said it can return. If you can warn them in time, you can get their vision back. And so that's why they tried to get it taken off the market, because so many people were going blind and having seizures. And, they are so very, very powerful. But I was on the Deborah Duncan show some years ago. One of the women I had on there, she had seizures while driving. That's why we have a Mission Possible Aviation. And because pilots are having the same problems. Ended up in the hospital, was declared legally blind. And when I went on TV with her, her vision had returned. She could see perfectly. Her seizures had stopped. And I noticed that her wrist was slit. And Mary Rife is her name. I said, Mary, what happened? She said, as long as I was on NutraSweet, she said, all I could think of was committing suicide. And suicidal tendencies are one of the symptoms of depleting serotonin. And that's why we have all these problems. Even the doctors have said that the mental hospitals are just full of victims or patients that are nothing but people using aspartame, and they interact with all antidepressants, and they give them Diet Coke. So they don't have a chance, and they're building more and more mental hospitals.
I want to tell you, Betty, my son's grandmother was in the hospital, and she has, she's a diabetic and is on dialysis, and she was having problems and was in the hospital. And while I was there visiting, they brought her a soda, a diet soda.
Yeah.
I went through the roof. I said, do not drink. I said it right in front of the person who brought it. I said, what is wrong with you people? She's a diabetic and she's overweight, and you're bringing her an aspartame cocktail to drink. I said, take that away. I said, I don't know. I can't understand what's wrong with you people. Bring her some juice.
Which hospital was it?
Rapid City Regional Hospital in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Okay, well, let me tell you something. I ran into a nurse at Emory University Hospital, and I gave her information, and she just shook her head. She says, everybody here at Emory knows this. She said, every single patient that we have in dialysis is on aspartame.
Unbelievable.
And it causes interstitial cystitis, big time. And Dr. Safredi says it causes kidney cancer. And so they're just, are you familiar with Agenda 21?
Yes, I am.
Well, now you know why they're doing it. Depopulation, which is what the FDA told me, because I filed a citizen's petition for ban. And in 2002, the law is in 180 days they have to answer. The only thing they did was send me a letter. It's been over 10 years saying that they got more important things to do. An attorney says file an imminent health hazard amendment because that they have to answer in a week or 7 days. That was in 2007. They ignored it, and they finally called me, and they didn't like it. They were upset about it. And Dodge says the FDA wants to talk to you. I said, the FDA, they're actually calling me now because he said, Obama said they had to go back and, catch up with all the correspondence they hadn't answered since 2007. This was in 2009. And I said, you have to answer that in writing. He says, how did you know that? I said, you think I don't know FDA laws? I lecture all over the world. People are sick and dying. He said, so what? We need to depopulate.
Oh, my gosh.
That's just a passionate FDA. I call them fatal drugs allowed, folks.
Yeah, no kidding. They're the same people who think fluoride's good for us to consume. Betty's website is www.mpwhi.com, Mission Possible World Health International, chock full of documentation and information. Please go there, educate yourselves, and share this information widely. Betty, I thank you so much for being my guest today. You are a wealth of information, and for those people who think that they can't do anything to change the world, you can do exactly what Betty's doing, and you can compile the documentation on what this product does, and you can share it widely. You can post it on bulletin boards all around your community. You can make a difference where you're at. So join Betty in the fight to get this removed from the market. Tomorrow, my guest is Rick Paulson. He's the author of Making a Superstar Company, and he will be joining us. If you would like to leave a comment, have a question, guest suggestion, or you just want to send me fan mail, you can do that at morningbrew@hotmail.com. And I'm also on Facebook. .com/morningbrew on Orion Talk Radio, so you can like me there and keep abreast of all of our great guests like Betty Martini on there. And so, Betty, do you have any closing thoughts in the last minute of our show today?
Yes, I want anybody who used aspartame in any form during pregnancy to get in touch with me or Dr. Walton, because he's doing a study. It's rwalton193@AOL.com, and my email is bdm19@manspring.com. And because this is a way to show what's going on as far as the babies are concerned, we just want to, there's a form on my website that you fill out and send to him or send to me. And that's very, very important. And there's also the aspartame information list, which you can get on, and you'll get all my emails.
Thank you, Betty, so much for all that you do, and we just appreciate your work and your husband who so graciously supports you in this effort. So thank you so much. I hope everyone has an awesome week. Join me tomorrow with Rick Paulson. Have a good day and a great week. Thank you, Betty.
Thank you, Gwen.